going forward, everybody has to be on the same page. If you're looking at it from a positive standpoint, it can only get better from here. They all have to be in lockstep with what they want, what the vision is, and then you go from there. Hey, welcome to another edition of Upon Further Review, brought to you by Coors Light. I'm your host, Paul Gutierrez. And unless you just kind of took a long, joyful nap after Sunday's season finale win over the Kansas City Chiefs and missed all the news, there is no such thing as an offseason in the NFL. We are full on into coaching search season. The Raiders have parted ways with Pete Carroll on Monday. Pete Carroll, after a 3-14 one-and-done season, the Raiders are on the hunt for a new coach. Raiders owner Mark Davis put out a statement on Monday, essentially saying the Raiders have relieved Pete Carroll of his duties as head coach. We appreciate and wish him and his family all the best. Moving forward, General Manager John Spytek will lead all football operations in close collaboration with Tom Brady, including the search for the club's next head coach. Together, they will guide football decisions with a shared focus on leadership, culture, and alignment with the organization's long-term vision and goals. I don't think it gets any clearer than that as to what's going to happen next, who's leading the search, who's leading the charge, and somebody to join me right here, right now, to kind of break down what it all means. Raider Nation Radio's host and kind of everything guy out there, my guys joining me from Studio Q, Q Myers. Q, thank you so much for joining me and trying to break all of this down. I know we just talked on the radio prep over the past week a couple of times, but just your knee-jerk reaction here to here we go one more time again.
Well, that's what it is, Paul, and it's a pleasure, man. It's like we have a role reversal.
Yeah.
You're normally on my show, I'm on your show. This is awesome. But in reality, man, it's unfortunate because it is here we go again with the Raiders and another head coaching search, and there's obviously been too many of them since they've been here in Las Vegas, but this is what it is. And I applaud the organization for understanding that, okay, what happened in 2025 wasn't going to be the way that they needed to move forward, was not the right direction. The vision may have been on point at first, like when everything came together, but it quickly got off the rails. And so they decided that instead of trying to make it work, they were just going to go ahead and rip off the Band-Aid, move in another direction, and try to find the ultimate vision that they can share together and build this team to go in the right direction where they can at some point be a winning organization and have stability. And so that was just my reaction. I think it's something that we all kind of expected was going to happen. And then when in fact it did happen and MD puts out that statement, I thought that was also a really good statement to also kind of allow everyone that always had questions of, okay, what's Tom Brady's role? What's John Spytek's role? He put it right there in black and white. And so I think it made it very specific. So that's a good step forward. Now the games begin as they go ahead and start looking for their coach.
Yeah, no doubt. And you mentioned it right there that this is seemingly like a every year, if not every other year, situation for the Raiders since they moved to Las Vegas in 2020. Since 2021, the Raiders have gone through, as coach, John Gruden, Rich Bisaccia as an interim, Josh McDaniels, Antonio Pierce, Pete Carroll, and whoever is stepping up next. Now, there are reports out there, NFL Network is reporting that at least 4 interviews are set up beginning this week. Denver quarterback coach Davis Webb, Kansas City OC Matt Nagy, Denver defensive coordinator Vance Joseph, Seattle OC Clint Kubiak. What does that lineup, that initial lineup before, tell you about where this potentially could go and what the vision is?
It just lets me know that they're not set on one guy, on one particular style. And I think that that's the correct way to approach this. Now, it's going to be up to them to make the right decisions. That's something that we've talked a lot about throughout the course of the offseason so far is right decisions, right decisions, right decisions. But having a quarterback coach, having an OC, having a DC, having a guy that's been there, done that. I mean, look, there's different flavors there, right? I mean, it's like the variety pack of Kool-Aid, right? It's not just grape or red, right? I mean, so they've got multiple flavors there. And so I think that they're leaving their options open. And that, to me, is the right approach. You know, there's been years where we can look back and say, well, I feel like that they only targeted this guy and, well, it didn't work out with him. So then they had to pivot, but they didn't know what direction to go. This time they're I feel like leaving it open. They're going to hear all these guys out. They're going to talk to them, share their vision and how that next potential head coach could go out there and execute the vision and also obviously hear what their vision is as well. So they don't have that situation, Paul, where they're not aligned when it comes up for time to go out there and execute and put this team together and go into the draft process. And so everyone's on the same page. That's how it has to be. That's the only way that this thing is going to work. So having that big wide net that they're casting, I think makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, and it's not just being on the same page. It has to be the right page, right? Because I think you
Right.
could look back and say, well, these two guys were on the same page, but it wasn't the right page. It was the wrong page,
Right.
and they had to move on. And when you look at it from that standpoint, and you look at the statement again, like you said, to me, that statement was perfectly crafted. Because it told fans exactly, here is the tip of the spear. Here are the guys that are going to run the search, and it has to be through their vision. That's John Spytek and Tom Brady. And as you and I spoke about on the radio, the thing that kind of infuriated me or kind of frustrated me over the past few days is the national take on this is that, well, what is Tom Brady's role? What is this? Mark Davis said it back in training camp. He sat down right here on a couple doors away here in the studio and talked to Baron Davis and talked about how Tom Brady is basically the football czar here, something that he had been trying to get in place since John Gruden left in 2021. So now with Brady and Spytek running this search, how do some of these potential other names out there's some potential candidates out there. John Harbaugh's the big name that's out there right now. There's some other guys that are out there. Kevin Stefanski, a two-time NFL Coach of the Year. Brian Flores has the Patriot connection with Tom Brady. Clint Kubiak, we mentioned. Jesse Minter in the division with the Chargers, the Chargers defensive coordinator. Chris Shula, the Rams defensive coordinator. Jeff Hafley, Vance Joseph, like we mentioned. And then another name that's real intriguing to me, Cliff Kingsbury. How do those guys then potentially fit into this role, this vision that Brady and Spytek share?
Well, that's the thing about it. I mean, that's when you have to decide, is it a younger coach that they want to go with, someone that is not going to come in there and say, I need to have all the power. I need to be the guy that's making all the decisions. If I'm going to, make the dinner, I want to pick all the groceries, right?
Sure.
I mean, again, if this is truly going to be John Spytek and Tom Brady putting this together, is the guy that they hire, is he going to be just the head coach? Or is he going to be the guy that says, no, I need more power? And it feels like that's what was going on with the last coach that they had. It felt like that Pete Carroll, who's very set in his ways, who, as we know in Seattle, he had a lot of say-so with everybody that was coming into the organization. And, I think Seattle at some point was ready to allow John Schneider to be that guy, where he's the one that's making more of the decisions. I feel like that's what the Raiders are doing now, allowing John Spytek to be more involved and really make a lot more of the decisions. Obviously, referring to Brady as well, and them coming together. So that's when you look at a guy like John Harbaugh, and I know when that news broke, Raider Nation was like, "Oh, that's the guy. Go get him. He's a proven winner." But I mean, then you take a couple steps back, you take a deep breath, and you realize, like, well, hold on now.
Right.
How much say so is he going to want to have,
right?
And he's obviously going to have options. He's going to pick whatever job he feels like fits what he wants best. So it's not like he's looking for his first head coaching opportunity. He's not looking for, well, maybe this could be my big break. Like he's going to be able to decide what path he wants to take. So I just think some of these head coaches that are more willing to be a head coach and just really emphasize on what they're going to do with these players, that they all come together and decide that they're going to draft or go and sign in free agency, not guys that demand all the power in the world, all the say-so and personnel. I think those guys make more sense.
Well, especially since, as we've seen in the upside-down world of the NFL, right, and we've talked about this before too, it seems weird that a coach would have more sway than a general manager in terms of hiring his boss. Right. It's different in different sports, and it seems like it's kind of a flip around here again to where the GM is picking his coach, and if that's indeed the case, well, then the GM is going to have that 51-49 say over things. When you look at it from that perspective, and if you're a coach coming in looking for a job and you're interviewing, you're more than interested. What makes the Raiders such an appealing destination? Not just for an established coach, but if we're going to kind of eliminate that, right? They have to be somebody that's going to fit the plan. Right. What makes the Raiders appealing?
Well, first of all, they're a historic organization, right? I mean, there's the rest of the league, and then there's the Raiders, right? There's something to be said about the Raiders, and I know that every head coach that has come into the organization has tried to get things turned around, have always had that, kind of vision in the back of their mind, like, man, if I'm the team, if I'm the coach to turn the Raiders around and get them back to being commitment to excellence and just win, baby, then all of a sudden, then that's even a bigger feather in the cap to them. So there's one thing about being the Raiders, right? And then the other thing is you've got the number 1 overall draft pick, right? So there is no franchise quarterback, in my opinion, in place right now with the Raiders. They obviously need to go out there and get that. They have that opportunity to do that. That's not saying that they have to do that, but they have the opportunity if whoever the head coach so chooses to go do that. So now if I'm an offensive-minded guy, or even a defensive-minded guy, and I say, you know what, I like that Mendoza guy. I like that Dante Moore guy. I like that now Ty Simpson. Now we know he's dipping his toes into the water. It's like, if I like that guy, I have the opportunity to go get him. Paul, I have $100 million in salary cap space. So I know that there's a lot of holes that need to be filled. I know my offensive line has to add a couple starters to it. Well, I can do that in free agency before I even go draft my quarterback, right? Hey, there's this guy named Brock Bowers. He's pretty good, right? He's one of the best tight ends in the game right now, and only just finished year 2. You got this guy in Ashton Genty who went for 1,300 plus scrimmage yards and 10 touchdowns and didn't really have an offensive line to give him any kind of help, right? He did that his rookie year. Got this guy named Max Crosby, who's a 5-time, Pro Bowler now, and he's a guy that every team looks at and says, man, we need a Max Crosby, and those situations will work themselves out one way or the other. But I mean, I think that there's a lot to like, and then on top of that, you're in Las Vegas. You're in an amazing stadium. Allegiant's awesome. The practice facility, as you know, the headquarters is incredible. So there's a lot to like about the situation, and you just have to trust and believe and know that John Spytek, Tom Brady, and Mark Davis ultimately are going to be patient enough to allow you to build this.
Yeah, and it seems like it's one of the situations where it's the best it's been for the Raiders in a long time. And then when you compare it to the other openings that are out there, I mean, it's one of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 openings right now. We're including the Cardinals, the Falcons, the Ravens, the Browns, the Raiders, the Giants, and the Titans. So when you're looking at it that way, and you're seeing, okay, if you have your druthers and you could go wherever you want, I think you and I both know where we would go. But it makes it all the more intriguing because of that number 1 pick, because of the cap space, because of the young talent that's still here. And when John Spytek spoke, he prioritized building, quote unquote, the right way. When he said we want a meticulous build that will set us up for years of success in the future. And, again, that goes back to being on the same page. And when you were in that locker room on clean-out day on Monday, I don't think anybody said it any better than Trey Tucker. He said, going forward, everybody just needs to be on the same page. What does that mean to you?
Well, it just means that they all have to be aligned where they share the same vision and understand what this is, right? There's no shortcutting this process. There really isn't, and I know that some fans and folks will point out certain teams. Well, look, this team did it. Yeah, but what did they go through to get there, right? I hate the narrative that you could just flip a switch and get it done overnight, because you might have some short-term success, but would that be sustainable, right? And you can look at Washington. They went to the NFC Championship game a year ago, and they're picking in the top 10 this year. Right. And for one reason or the other. Right. So, I mean, there's multiple teams that you can look at and say, oh, man, this team needs to be what that team did. Go out and make this. It's a quick fix. There's no such thing as a quick fix in the NFL, in my opinion. I think that you need to build it correctly through the draft, and I think that's what John Spytek wants to do. Last year they had, 8 draft picks and turned it into 11? Right. And I know every guy's not still on the roster, but he understood what he needed to do. He needed to get more talent in the building, right? They have 10 draft picks that they're expected to have this year right now. That might turn to 12 or 14 for all we know when it's all said and done. They just need to go and get youthful talent. Go back and look at Tampa Bay after Tom Brady won the Super Bowl there and then eventually retired, right? They had the youngest roster in the league, and they were all contributing. They were contributing at such an early age and an early time that they were big time playmakers, and you see what they were able to do. They set themselves up for sustained success, and that's what John Spytek wants to do.
And that's being part of being on the same page. Whoever that new coach coming in is, they've got to buy into that going forward. Because again, as you mentioned, you got Brock Bowers, Ashton Genty. Don't sleep on Michael Mayer. He showed what he could do those last couple games with Brock on IR. Colton Miller, left tackle. He only played a handful of games at the beginning of the season before going on IR. Jeremy Chin, again, kind of solidified the back end of things. And again, Max Crosby, we'll see how that situation plays out. But with John Spytek, he also said something else that really caught my ear in his press conference on Monday when he said, we don't want to let good players leave our building. That's happened around here. And you look around the league now, you see guys in the playoffs, you see guys that had good seasons that are former Raiders. Robert Spillane, Trevon Merrick, Kelavon Chason, Divine Diablo. How big of a opportunity is it then for Spytek to look at the current free agents that are coming up? Because this is something that nobody's talked about yet. I know we're real early in the game here, Q. They've got 22 pending free agents on the roster per Spotrac. And some of those big names there, Zamir White, Raheem Mostert at running back. You go Tyler Lockett, receiver, Kenny Pickett, Stone Forsythe, Dylan Parham, Jordan Meredith, Will Putnam, Jacob Obenware, Daniel Carlson. And then you look every single linebacker. Devin White, Jamal Adams, E-Rob. The list goes on and on. Malcolm Kuntz, Charles Snowden, Thomas Booker IV, Eric Stokes, cornerback. all heading to
Yes.
free agency. How much of an impact, how much of a focus is that going to be, or should it be, really, is the question. Should it be for John
Yeah.
Spytek?
No, it should be a big focus because there are some guys that you rattled off their names that should definitely be back. I think Eric Stokes is a perfect example. He had a quiet, really good season, and I told him that in the locker room. I said, "Man, I thought that you had a really good season. It was quiet, but that's a good thing, right? That means there wasn't there wasn't a bunch of blown coverages. I mean, I know he didn't have any interceptions, but teams weren't routinely throwing at him, and he wasn't giving up big plays. I mean, he looked like a really solid corner, a guy that was a former first-round pick, a guy that really had to just prove to everyone else that, hey, the health situations that he had earlier in his career are behind him, and he could play the majority of the season. And he did. He missed one game this past year, right?
Yeah.
So I think that Eric Stokes is a guy that proved that he can come back. I'm a big fan of E-Rob and Jamal Adams. I think that those veteran linebackers, I think that those guys, they provided some veteran leadership for this team. I could see one or two of those guys, possibly coming back, right? I could see them being re-signed for that leadership role. I also like guys like, Tommy Eichenberg. I think I like what he did at the end of the season. So, I could see a blend there at that linebacker position where you have a vet or two that you hold on to. And, Devin White, but all of a sudden he had a full season that he played. He hasn't played a full season since he was in Tampa Bay, right? I mean, so there was a lot to like individually with certain guys. It just didn't come together as a team. Malcolm Kuntz came on strong at the end, right? Charles Snowden, the snowman, he came on, right? I was disappointed that they let Chason go last year because I thought Chason, being a former first-round pick from the Jaguars, I thought he did some good things with the Raiders back in 2024, and then he ends up in New England, and he had a really good season, as you mentioned. There's a handful of guys right now going to be playing in the postseason this weekend that we'll see, or even next weekend, that were former Raiders.
Yeah, and I think what's different about this coming into this offseason is that at least, last year in the offseason, you had an entirely new front office come in. They didn't really, all they knew of that previous roster was the tape. Now, at least with Spytek in here, he knows what these guys can and can't do. Probably more important than what they can't do, and that would probably be the decision in whether or not to bring them back. But then there's also these notable guys that are still under contract, as we mentioned, Brock Bowers, Ashton Genty, Trey Tucker, we talked about real briefly. Defensively, Max Crosby, Jeremy Chin, Isaiah Polamau, who got hurt in that last game. Yeah. There are some pieces here that they can still build around. And this was kind of what I said coming out of training camp was I liked the roster at the time, but it was kind of top-heavy. If there were certain injuries at key positions, then the lack of depth was really going to show its way through. And I think that's kind of what we saw, especially early on. Who are some of the guys, in your opinion, whether it's a Trey Tucker or even a JPJ, coming back that you really can kind of circle and say, you know what, these are foundation pieces for not just for John Spytek and Tom Brady and Mark Davis, but for whoever the next coach is coming in?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, I look at the rookie class and some of the guys that started to pop at the end, the Tonka Hemingways and the JJ Pegueses. I like those guys. You saw multiple sacks from Tonka Hemingway, and you saw Pegues come up with a fumble recovery on the way to having 8 sacks in that final game against Kansas City. So I mean, you saw that those some of those guys that are starting to get a little bit of action and got some action at the end of the season. I think that those guys are some guys to get excited about. I'm glad you mentioned though JPJ. This is all I want. I just want whoever's going to come in, decide where he's going to play and let him play.
Right.
Like don't yo-yo back and forth with them. Don't, say, hey, he's in competition. He might be a starter. He might be a backup. Look, JPJ should be a starter as far as I'm concerned. If you start him at center, you start him at center. If you start him at guard, that's fine too. Like, I'm not the offensive line expert. I'm not the guy who tells you where you need to play guys. But I do know a starting player when I see one. And he's a starter, and he's a guy that you should get excited about. I think he brings some of that nasty to the offensive line that they need. I like Caleb Rogers. I know a lot of people are excited about Charles Grant. I don't think we saw enough of him to really say exactly what he can do. You have DJ Glaze. He can either be a starter, he could be kicked inside the guard, he could be a swing tackle. I mean, there's a lot of different things. There's players that can play roles. I guess that's the best way to put it. You look at a guy like Adam Butler, who I think is one of the best leaders in that locker room, right? I mean, I still go back to, Antonio Pierce's one year with as the full-time starter when they were going through some things, and he was in the locker room like, hey, man, what can I trust you to do? How can I trust you, trust me, right? I mean, and he stood up in front of that room. It wasn't Max, it was Adam Butler. And I really do appreciate his leadership and what he brings to the table. And when we saw the situation happen before the season with the defensive line and defensive tackles that used to be with the Raiders, he stepped up and said, hey, no problem. I'm that guy. And that's what he told us back in Costa Mesa.
Yeah.
Remember when he said at the podium, he's like, hey, I want to be this guy that they can rely on, have a bigger role on this team. And he stepped right in and he filled that. So a guy like Adam Butler, I really can appreciate as well.
Yeah, and that's the defensive line. Let's go back to the offensive line here real quick, because you said something about JPJ that made a lot of sense to me as well, and our good friend Lincoln Kennedy. In talking with Link about the offensive line, guys need to know what their role is, and then you just kind of you stick to it. You don't want to have all these different rotations, all these different lineups and everything. How important then is that to know that? And I think we're going to get a clue as to where they're going to go in the draft, depending upon what happens early in free agency. If they start attacking the offensive line in free agency, okay, they're trying to protect for a quarterback. I think. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy here. Right. What do you see them doing in terms of let's pencil out an offensive line right now, I guess.
I think that you put, Colton Miller's coming back at the left tackle. He's healthy.
Yep.
I would be comfortable with JPJ at the left guard spot. I mean, Dylan Parham, you mentioned he's a free agent. I don't know if they're going to bring him back or not. He's kind of had an up and down career with the Raiders, and he's been banged up quite a bit. I would have no problem if they put JPJ there at the left guard spot. Slid in, a free agent center. I'm looking at Baltimore. I'm just going to go ahead and put out there. Right, go and get a free agent center right there. I think Caleb Rogers could play that right guard spot, but I would have no problem if they brought in a free agent there and had some good competition. I don't know if Alex Kappa is a guy that they're going to be high on moving forward, but I thought he did good when he stepped in at the center spot. Right, I have to give him credit for that. I was so surprised when I first saw him as center, but I thought he took that position and really kind of owned it. And then you've got a question at the right tackle spot. I don't think DJ Glaze has had the real competition behind him that he probably needs. So, if they go out there and get 2 or 3 free agents for the offensive line, they make a defined role for JPJ. I think that all of a sudden they're in a really good position, and Ashton Genty's sleeping better at night. If they bring in a quarterback, he's sleeping better at night. The offense in general sleeps better at night because they know they have an opportunity to execute instead of like they had this year with Geno Smith getting sacked 55 times. Yeah. That was sacked 55 times. That's not how many times he got hit.
No.
I mean, that dude got battered and bruised all throughout the course of the year. So they need to make sure that they really upgrade that offensive line. And I would not be shocked, Paul, at all if when free agency opens, that's the first, second, and third move you see them make is on that offensive line.
Yeah, I would think so. I would hope so. And without talking about the future, you can't talk about the future without talking about the past and kind of looking back. Because if you don't learn from your mistakes, you're doomed to repeat them continually. I think that the saying goes something like that. Assessing the 2025 season. I mean, a 3-14 season is a 3-14 season. Yeah. Whether you're beating the Patriots in the opener, the Titans midway through the season, or the Chiefs at the end. When you look back, the offense, 32nd in the NFL. The defense was a top half of the NFL. I mean, they were number 14. What's your major takeaway here? I mean, when I look at it, it's like just kind of promise unfulfilled. And every time, I know when we were doing the podcast early on, I said after that Washington game, well, they can't get any worse than this, or they've hit rock bottom. And then it's like, well, here came the Colts. Well, here came the Chiefs. Here came this game, that thing. Your knee-jerk reaction, just I guess, when somebody says, "Hey, Q, how would you describe in one sentence or less the Raiders' 2025 season?"
It was just a major disappointment. Yeah. I mean, if we want to be as honest as possible, it was a major disappointment. Everything that was positioned in place to guide the Raiders in 2025 looked like it was guys that have been there, done that. The resumes were there, and the belief was that the culture was going to continue to build. And I'll say this, I think that Antonio Pierce started to change the culture with the Raiders. I don't think he finished. I don't think he understood quite how to get there. And that's why I thought, okay, Pete Carroll's going to make a lot of sense. He'll come in. He's been there, done that. He's got the resume. He's taken organizations in college and in the NFL and put them in a better place. So I thought that was going to be the vision. I never expected this team to be a playoff team. I thought that they were going to probably double what they did in 2024, because Pete Carroll, that's what he's going to bring to the table. And then when we just saw the way that it got off to just a weird start and, even the offense, I thought, oh, man, this is going to be an innovative offense with, a sharp mind like Chip Kelly. And that never got off the ground. So it was so many things that came up disappointing. I was super excited about Ashton Genty because we saw what he did in college. And look, again, in Green Bay, when I shook his hand and interviewed him when he came off the stage from getting his jersey with Roger Goodell, if you had told me, Q, 1,300 plus scrimmage yards and 10 touchdowns on the season, I would have thought, okay, all right. That's not a bad season at all. Now, I didn't know that he was going to have to go for 1,200 yards just to get to almost 1,000 yards rushing, right? I mean, he had to shake all these tackles. So that was unfortunate. I didn't obviously know how it was going to play out, but I would like to see him with a real opportunity, a real offensive line in front of him, and a threat offensively. And I think that all of a sudden you have a really good weapon in front of you.
Q, thank you so much, man. This was cool. This was fun. Reversing roles here a little bit. So I'll look forward to reversing with you again here pretty soon.
Absolutely, man. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate you.
All right, man. Take care. Hey, that'll do it for this week's edition of Upon Further Review. Thanks to our guest, Q Myers, for reviewing all of the recent news going on with the Raiders. To stay up to date on all things silver and black, make sure to check out our shows and watch them all on our YouTube channel, and visit Raiders.com for more content.